Hi everyone, good afternoon. I hope you're all well and thank you for joining us today. We're really excited that you've decided to spend your lunchtime or afternoon learning about saving wildcats. So I think we're good to go and I'll just get right into it. So I'm Helena and I'm a Conservation Project Officer for the Saving Wildcats project. And today I'll be talking about the history of wildcat conservation in Scotland. And we'll be providing a brief overview of the Saving Wildcats project. So today's presentation is quite family friendly, so I won't be going into too much detail on the technicalities of what we're doing. But if you have any questions at all, you're welcome to email us at wildcats@rss.org.uk or ask me any questions at the end of the presentation. Also, if you want to put anything in the chat, if you can't hear something, if you want me to go back, just definitely do that and I'll read the chat as we're going along. So thank you for that. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so wildcats are the UK's last remaining wild felid, and unfortunately they're really on the brink of extinction. And it's estimated that there are less than 115 individuals left in the wild. The reality is that it's really difficult to know how many cats are still out there, and that's because of a few reasons. So their behaviour means they're really difficult to find. They also crossbreed and hybridize, with domestic cats. So that means that wild cats have kittens with domestic cats, and these offspring then may have kittens with other hybrids or other wild cats or other domestic cats. Identifying whether a cat is a wildcat or not is actually really difficult. And this hybridization is a sort of huge threat to wildcats, as is persecution and disease transfer from domestic cats as well. Also, habitat loss. Unfortunately, that's something that pretty much every species is facing. Habitat loss is also a really big issue, and as are road traffic accidents. So we actually have more cats in captivity than in the wild, we believe, in different zoos across the UK. And these cats that are in captivity are essential for saving the species. So how did we get to where we are today? So wildcats arrived on the British Isles 9,000 years ago and were once present throughout England, Wales and Scotland. So wildcats arrived 9,000 years ago, as opposed to the domestic cat, which arrived on the British Isles about 2,500 years ago, roughly. So unfortunately, centuries of persecution and habitat loss led to a low point for wildcats at the end of the 1800s. And no wildcats were left in England or Wales at the time, and the population was restricted to Scotland. During and after the First World War, the wildcat range actually expanded, however. And this was because there was less gamekeeping activity. So a lot of gamekeepers up in Scotland were sent off to fight the war. And this meant that less wildcats were persecuted. There was also a significant change in land use, with sort of the government prioritising reforestation, so planting more trees to make up for all the resources that had been used in the war. And this meant that the wildcat range actually expanded sort of over the war and after the war. However, this meant that the wildcats were coming into contact with more domestic cats. And as I've already said, they started breeding with domestic cats, and that led to hybridization, which was an issue. So about a century later, in the late 1900s, people started becoming quite concerned with the wildcat population. Recognizing that the last few remaining wildcats were catching diseases from feral cats and hybridizing extensively with them. And so this is, hybridization is now considered the biggest threat to survival of wildcats in Scotland. And in 1988, wildcats were legally protected for the first time, meaning it's illegal to kill or to disturb a wildcat. And so disturbing a wildcat would be something like going to where it has its den and its kittens. So due to concerns for the wildcat in Scotland, important research on wildcats was conducted, and it just highlighted how sort of dire the situation was, unfortunately. And to protect the wildcat and to distinguish it from other cats, classification based on the markings on wildcat coats, known as pelage scoring, was developed. So I don't know if you can see my mouse on here, but in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a wildcat coat, which is the one on the left, and a domestic cat coat is the one on the right. And obviously there are individual differences, but sort of the main distinguishing features of a wildcat is its tail. They are more blunt, you can see, so more rounded at the end, and they have very distinct black stripes, whereas a domestic cat is more likely to have a pointier tail, and the stripes are normally quite broken up, almost appearing dotted. So in 2009, a pilot project was launched to trial conservation action for wildcats in the Cairngorms, and the findings from this project were used to develop a conservation plan in 2013, which united a large group of leading organisations and experts who wanted to save our wildcats. Scottish Wildcat Action was then launched in 2015, and this project carried out a lot of research as well as education and outreach. And in 2019, a report was published by the IUCN Cat Specialist Group. So this is a group of international experts, and they concluded there's no longer a viable population of wildcats living in Scotland. So that basically means that there was no evidence that the population would survive, and there were too few individuals to be able to carry on the population. And they said that extinction of the wildcat was likely without carefully carried out wildcat releases. So this brings us to saving wildcats, which is the project I'm currently working on. And in the rest of the presentation, I'll be talking to you about who we are and what we are planning to do. So this is a picture of some of the team and those of us who were sort of able to get there on the day this was taken. Saving Wildcats, the European Partnership project dedicated to Scottish wildcat conservation and recovery. So we, like our name, we want to save the wildcat, and we aim to prevent the extinction of wildcats in Scotland by breeding and releasing them into the wild. So we're a team of dedicated conservation professionals, and the Saving Wildcats project is supported by international experts that come from a range of partners across Scotland and further afield in Europe, and we're led by the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. So what are we planning to do? So the project has two main elements to it, which is our pre-release work, so before we release any cats, and our post-release work. So at the moment, we're very much in the pre-release phase of our project. So this pre-release phase will occur before we release any wildcat, and there are two strands of work. So the first is to check that the areas that we want to release cats in are suitable. And the second is conservation breeding, so making sure that the cats that we want to release are prepared for a life in the wild. And once we're happy that there is a suitable area for releasing the wildcats into, and that the cats are ready to be released, we'll be doing a trial release with a small number of cats and learning from that release. But as we haven't done a release yet, we're not in that sort of phase yet. And the eventual aim of the project is to establish a viable population of wildcats in the wild. So it's quite an ambitious goal because we're really reversing, decades, if not centuries of decline. But we're really hoping that we will get there. And once we release cats, we're just going to monitor them to learn about their behaviour, which hopefully will help us then with further releases down the line. So I've mentioned sort of all this conservation breeding work and pre-release stuff that we're doing, but what actually is this? So not everyone will be familiar with the term ex-situ conservation, but this essentially means doing conservations with animals that are not in the wild. So this covers breeding animals, which is what we're currently doing. So the aim of our ex-situ conservation is to breed and prepare wildcats prior to their release. So basically making sure that they're ready to be released and they have the best chance at succeeding once they are released. So how are we doing that? So we have a team of dedicated keepers as well as several vets who work on the project, and their responsibilities include managing the diets of the wildcats to ensure that they're fed the correct amounts, that they're fed the correct things, and that the wildcats have plenty of opportunities to display natural behaviours, So, you know, all the running, jumping, pouncing, climbing, and that the cats are healthy. So all of our cats before arriving go through quite a strict health screening, and we monitor them while they're with us, obviously, to make sure that they're healthy. So to make sure that the wildcats are exhibiting their natural behaviours, we have a bunch of cameras actually set up in their enclosures, which provides us with entertainment, and today you hopefully with some entertainment. So the video I'm about to show you is one of our cats exhibiting a pouncing behaviour, which they would have to use when catching prey. So let's go to that video. Brilliant. I also see we have a question coming in, but I'm just going to wait to the end to ask questions if that's okay. So in the next video, you're going to see one of our wildcats, Droma, being weighed by one of the keepers, and you'll sort of see the way that the keeper does it. The keeper has fed Droma on this platform before, meaning she's happy to come down to it, and getting the weights off the cat ensures that we know they're being fed the correct amount. So you can sort of see that Droma's come onto this platform, not really understanding, of course, at its scale, that the keeper is able to get her there and able to take a weight. So our keepers are, you know, doing what they can to make sure that our cats have the best standard of care. And our keepers put a lot of thought into designing the enclosures that the wildcats are in, and make sure that the enclosures are full of fun platforms, hiding areas, and different materials that they can get plenty of exercise. So I'll just show you this video as well, which is quite a funny one, taken on one of our cameras at night, of course, but it just shows sort of the wildcats making the most of their. So we're hoping to breed kittens from the wildcats that we currently have, and they'll only be released once they have passed a fitness for release checklist. And this means that basically we'll have assessed them, so we'll have watched all these videos, we'll have you know, been told by the keepers what their behaviour is like, and based on lots of criteria, we'll basically say, yes, this wildcat will do well in the wild. And only after we've done that, we'll release them. And we're going to use CCTV monitoring to make sure that they're displaying all of the correct behaviours. So where do our wildcats live? And sort of where am I joining you from? I'm actually joining you from my flat today because it's just easier to give an online presentation here, but the team are actually based at Highland Wildlife Park in the Cairngorms National Park, and it's about 20 minutes from Aviemore and just off the A9, so north of the Cairngorms National Park. So yeah, we're based at the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland's Highland Wildlife Park, and that's where our cats are too. And this is where our conservation breeding for release centre is. So this centre is a dedicated facility for our wildcats to live away from human disturbances in a quiet and remote location where no visitors are allowed. And the breeding enclosures, as you've just seen, are complex and enriching areas for the cats where we can breed and care for them. We'll soon be building several larger and more natural pre-release enclosures where young wildcats will move to prepare them for a life in the wild. And like I've said, these enclosures will be equipped with CCTV monitoring to ensure that we can monitor behaviour. And every decision taken in the design of the centre and the care of our cats supports our objective of preparing wildcats for release by developing their natural behaviours and minimising their habituation to human presence. I'm going to show you another video now. So in this video, you should be able to see, no one's commented in the chat that they can't, so hopefully you all can. You'll be able to see some aerial footage of the enclosures as well as the site in which we will be building the pre-release enclosures. So if you see sort of a few construction material just there, we're sort of zooming towards them now. That's going to be used for our pre-release enclosures, and the area that we're sort of going towards is where they'll be built as well. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of space, and no visitors can come see them, so it is all away from any human disturbance, and hopefully that will get them used to life in the wild. So I've got a few more videos to show you. just because who doesn't like a cat video? The first video is of Embo. So Embo is a 1-year-old who's recently joined our Conservation Breeding for Release Centre. And Embo came to us from the Wildwood Trust down in Kent. So this one, make sure your volume's turned up because you can sort of hear him calling in the video. Great. And the next video is of one of our other new arrivals, Margaret. And you all today are actually some of the first people to hear about her arrival. And she's come to us from Chester Zoo and is becoming more confident day by day. And that's just her enjoying her enclosure. So as well as ex-situ management, our team also does in-situ wildcat conservation. And that's working in the wider area to make sure that we can release wildcats into areas that are able to support a wildcat population. So it's a lovely picture of our field team just there. And all of the in-situ wildcat conservation work is done by this wonderful team. And one of the field team's main priorities is to assess whether areas would be suitable for our wildcats to be released in. And then in the future, so we're not there quite yet, but in the future, they will prepare the release area and then monitor the cats once they have been released. So where are we releasing the wildcats? Really good question. So we haven't decided exactly where just yet, but it will be within the Cairngorms National Park, around Badenoch and Strathspey, which is, like I said, if you're not familiar with it, if you sort of Google the Cairngorms National Park, and then you go to sort of the north of it, and you'll see a road sort of going sort of all the way up to Inverness, and below that, at the north of the national park, is where we'll be releasing the cats. So at the moment, our team are focused on assessing potential release areas, and this means that we need to work out if wildcats can live in the area. Not only that, but if the people who live in that area are happy for the cats to be there. So in order to work this out, we need to know lots of things, including will there be enough food for the cats when they are released? Will the cats be at risk from persecution when they are released? Is the habitat good for them? So will there be like good den sites for them? And will the presence of wildcats impact any other threatened species that already live in that area? And how many domestic cats are in the areas? Like I said before, crossbreeding, so domestic cats mating with wildcats is one of the biggest threats to the species. So we'd have to make sure that there is an okay number of domestic cats in the area before we release wildcats. So there are many different ways of finding out answers to these questions. And our team is in the process of doing just that. So for example, right now, our field team are working out what the best way is to look for food availability for wildcats once they're released. And all of this work is being done in line with international and Scottish best practice guidelines, which means we're following the advice from experts. So I'm going to show you another video. And this video was taken by our field team, as well as our really good friends, Trax Ecology, who've been working with our team to do some prey surveys. And together they've used a drone to take thermal images of rabbits. So you can see sort of the bright circle that's sort of twisting around is actually a rabbit right now. And this is sort of one of the ways that we're counting prey in potential release sites. So we're sort of using cutting edge technology to try and make sure that we're making the best decisions that we can. And another way of finding out how much food is available in a release site is by camera trapping. So over winter, our team put out, I think it was 100 camera traps or over 100 camera traps in different areas. And they got, I think it was over 600,000 images back. So that's a lot. So for those of you who don't know, a camera trap is a digital camera connected to a sensor which can see movement. So when an animal moves past the camera records an image or video. And the great thing about camera traps is that they can be left out in the field to continuously watch an area of habitat for several weeks or months. So that's what our team did over the winter. Yeah, we left all these cameras out, and over sort of the past few months, our team have been very dedicated and have gone through all of the images, and these images will sort of feed into a wider assessment of where the best place to release wildcats will be. So as part of our project, we'll also be talking to the local community about the impact that our project may have on them and how they feel about the wildcats being released. And it's important that our project is supported by the people that will be living near to the released wildcats. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, it has been a bit tricky to talk to people. But we've sort of we're trying to start as best we can. You can see our two vets are in the photo on the right, they've got their masks on. So it's finding a balance between talking to people, which is really important, as well as being mindful that COVID is still happening, unfortunately, and we've got to be really safe. But if you're watching this presentation and you do live locally, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to get in touch with us in any way, please do. And like I said, the email address that is best to contact us on is wildcat@rzss.org.uk. And if you don't live in the sort of local area, well, what can you do? So you can sign up to our newsletter to hear about the news, essentially what's going on, and the project and how you can get involved. You can give a donation to support us. You can set up your own fundraising challenge. We've recently had a group of people compose a piece on the bagpipes, which they raised a bit of money for us through fundraising. So you can do something like that if you want. And just talking to us about your family and friends. The more people know about us, the better. And we just would love to hear from anyone who's sort of interested in knowing about what's going on, or if they have any questions for us. So this talk was given as part of Big Nature Day, which was part of the campaign to fight for Scotland's nature. And despite the great work that environmental organisations, community groups and others are doing to protect Scotland's amazing nature, unfortunately, it's struggling, just as it is elsewhere. Almost half of Scotland's wildlife species have decreased in number in the past 50 years, just like the wildcat, and 1 in 9 species in Scotland is at risk of extinction. But together, we can hopefully change this. So just like people, nature can recover if we give it the space, time and care that it needs. And the Fight for Scotland's Nature campaign is backed by more than 60 environmental charities, businesses and community groups across Scotland, and calls on the Scottish Government to set legally binding targets for the recovery of Scotland's nature, to restore natural habitats and reverse the decline in Scotland's biodiversity on land and at sea. And you can add your voice to the campaign by writing a short online message to our Environment Minister about why nature matters to you. And I'll post that link into the chat when we get onto the questions. So please do add your message once I post that link and read what other people have written. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. And if anyone has any questions, I can see there are some already. I will get to those. Okay, so let me just take a look at the Q&A. And if anyone has any further questions, please do either use the chat or the Q&A, that's absolutely fine. So I've got a question saying, is any work being done on the possible threat to newly released wildcats from other rewilding projects, such as the introduction of wolves, lynx, etc.? So that's a really good question. Currently, as wolves and lynx haven't yet been released anywhere in the UK, we haven't really considered the threat that they may have, just because we don't know where wolves or lynx would be released. If they were eventually released into the Cairngorms area, which would be where we're releasing our wildcats, that's definitely something we would consider. Absolutely, yes. And what we would do is probably examine how the animals are working together in Europe. So wolves, lynx, and wildcats still exist, still all sort of live together in Europe. So we would definitely sort of use European countries as a case study for that. And what I am just going to do now, if you just bear with me, is get up the link for you all so that you can take part in the campaign to fight for Scotland's nature. So I'll just post that in the chat now. Just bear with me 1 minute. Brilliant. Oh, Nick's already done it. Oh, he sent it to me. I'll send it to everyone. All right. So there we go, everyone. If you want to click that, you are more than welcome to, and we'd be really appreciative if you could sort of just have your say along with everybody else and read what everybody else sort of has said throughout the day. Okay. Oh, sorry. That was just the live stream looping back on me. Okay, so I don't believe there are any other questions that people have. But if you do, feel free to email us as well at wildcats@rzss.org.uk. So I've just put that email into the chat as well. And if there isn't anything else that people want to say, that's absolutely fine. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope that you continue to enjoy. Oh, we've got a new message. Maybe it's a question. Oh, thank you for coming in. Thanks, everyone. That's really nice. And yeah, go check out the rest of Big Nature Day. And yeah, I hope you enjoy learning all about Scotland's wildlife and Scotland's nature. So have a good afternoon, everyone. And lovely to at least feel that someone's watching, which is great. So bye, everyone.